Everybody, and welcome to a place where the room is cool, the night is quiet, and, unfortunately, the air might be slowly turning against you. Right now, you're probably nestled under your favorite blanket, with the soft hum of an air conditioner purring nearby. The heat of the day has finally faded, and your room has transformed into a chilled little sanctuary. You've turned the lights down. Your phone's on, do not disturb. Everything feels perfect. But in the background, something else is happening. Something you can't smell. Can't see. Can't even hear. Your room is filling with carbon dioxide. You probably won't survive this, without yawning, stretching, and hitting snooze 15 times tomorrow morning. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know your location and what time you're listening to this. I love seeing where our sleepy little science club is tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're lying in bed, lights off, phone on your chest, and that AC unit has been chugging for hours. The air feels clean. Crisp. Almost too cold on your toes. But it's comforting. Familiar. You've earned this. Meanwhile, with each breath you exhale, a tiny puff of carbon dioxide, CO2, drifts silently into your room. That's normal, of course. Every person exhales around 2 pounds of CO2 per day just by existing. But here's the twist: in a closed room with poor ventilation, say, your perfectly sealed, cool bedroom, the level of CO2 can rise threefold in just a few hours. Especially if the windows are shut and doors are sealed to keep the cold air in. Your air conditioner. It cools air. It doesn't bring in fresh air. It recirculates the same batch like an atmospheric smoothie. By midnight, your room might already be nearing 1,200 parts per million, ppm, of CO2. By 3 a.m., over 2,000 ppm if you're sharing that room with someone else. And by sunrise, you're practically marinating in your own carbon emissions. Cozy, huh? This isn't hypothetical. Several studies, like one done by the Technical University of Denmark, measured CO2 levels in bedrooms overnight and consistently found them exceeding healthy thresholds. If you've ever woken up groggy, head pounding, despite sleeping like a rock, it might not be stress. Or too much phone time. Or your mattress. It might be your air. Historically, this wasn't a thing. Back in the 1800s, people often slept near open windows, even in winter. In Victorian England, wealthier families had sleeping porches, basically outdoor beds covered with mosquito netting. They believed fresh air cured everything. Tuberculosis. Depression. Nightmares. Probably taxes, too. And while their science was sketchy, their instincts weren't completely wrong. Fast forward to today, modern bedrooms are hermetically sealed boxes, optimized for thermal efficiency. Thick windows, heavy insulation, draft stoppers. Everything designed to trap the comfort in, and, unintentionally, trap CO2 with it. You'd think the AC would fix that, right? Sorry. It cools, but it doesn't exchange. If you're not intentionally bringing in fresh outdoor air, you're just chilling yesterday's exhalations. Let's go deeper. Imagine your room is a 4 by 4 by 2.5 meter box. That's 40 cubic meters. You, just sleeping there, add roughly 0.004 cubic meters of CO2 every minute. Over 8 hours. That's about 2 cubic meters of CO2. And no, houseplants are not saving you. That fiddle leaf fig by the window? Cute, but it's not photosynthesizing in the dark. At night, plants actually consume oxygen and release CO2, just like you. Betrayal in botanical form. But here's a creepy thought: prisons in the 1800s were sometimes better ventilated than our bedrooms now. Seriously. Some old jail designs, like those in 19th century Sweden, prioritized airflow for moral hygiene. Today's apartments? Built for energy savings, not breathability. Now here's a quirky twist: in 1969, during the Apollo 11 mission, one of NASA's major concerns wasn't engine failure. It was CO2 buildup inside the lunar module. On the moon, the biggest threat to Neil Armstrong's survival wasn't lack of oxygen, it was too much carbon dioxide from his own breathing. And they had to jerry-rig a filter using plastic bags and duct tape. You, my friend, have a ductless mini-split unit and zero space filters. Modern-day historians still argue whether we, as a society, traded too much air exchange for energy efficiency. Some say sealed homes were necessary during the oil crises of the 1970s. Others believe it was just poor design ideology. What's certain is, we now sleep in boxes designed to trap air, not move it. And while we're on the subject of movement, there's none. At night, your body rests, your lungs slow, and your doors stay shut. No airflow, no exchange, no refresh. Just slow build-up. CO2 doesn't smell. Doesn't tickle your nose like smoke or pet dander. But your brain knows. Higher CO2 makes you feel slightly suffocated, not enough to panic, just enough to fog up cognition. It's like running your brain on 85% power, then trying to solve your dreams. Here's your first joke tonight: if you've ever dreamed of being trapped underwater and woken up sweaty, it wasn't your subconscious. It was your CO2 levels gently encouraging you to get out. But instead, you turn over. Tug the blanket up. And keep breathing in what you've breathed out. This is the quiet crisis of modern sleep. You work hard all day, trying to take care of your health, only to spend a third of your life unconscious in a box of your own carbon. You'll survive, sure. But tomorrow morning? That sluggish, brain-fogged, 2 coffees deep version of you might just be a little, carbon-heavy. The funny thing about air is that we talk about it like it's this clean, invisible soup floating around us, always ready to refresh our lungs, chill our skin, and keep our brains sharp. But air isn't just air. It's a messy, ever-changing blend of gases, particles, and exhalations, especially in a room that's been closed for hours. Right now, in your sealed, softly humming bedroom, you're mostly inhaling nitrogen and oxygen. But that tiny slice of CO2? That's the one playing tricks on your body. The average concentration of carbon dioxide in outdoor air is around 420 parts per million, ppm. But inside? It can go much, much higher. And it does. Here's the trap: your body doesn't feel CO2 levels rising. You don't suddenly gasp or cough or sit up in bed like you might with smoke or dust. The room smells the same. Feels the same. The air even seems clean, thanks to the AC. But quietly, invisibly, your blood starts to carry more carbon dioxide. Your brain, being the sensitive diva that it is, notices. There's a threshold, around 1000 ppm, where things start to go fuzzy. Not deadly. Just slower. Your cognitive function drops. Your ability to make decisions dulls. Memory recall blurs. You become just a little more foggy-headed, a little less you. It's subtle, like when you wear socks inside out and don't realize until lunch. Here's your first quirky tidbit for this section: a study in 2012 tested students in poorly ventilated classrooms. As CO2 levels rose past 1000 ppm, test scores dropped fast. At 2500 ppm, students performed as if they were legally tipsy. And that was without a single sip of wine. So, now picture your bedroom. You're not solving algebra in there, sure. But your brain is still hard at work, sorting memories, filing emotions, repairing thoughts, and occasionally tossing you a weird dream involving your high school math teacher riding a unicycle. Just me. Cool. But inside that brain, CO2 is whispering, "Hey, slow down. Don't bother with memory consolidation tonight. Just float." Now, historically, this wasn't as much of a problem. For most of human history, people didn't sleep in sealed boxes. Cavemen. Full airflow, all the time. Medieval peasants. Drafty huts. Even in 19th century cities, leaky windows and poor insulation meant constant air exchange. And their CO2 levels? Probably far lower than ours today. It wasn't until the 20th century, specifically post-World War II construction booms, that housing became airtight. Wall-to-wall insulation. Double-pane glass. Weather-stripped doors. And while this helped keep heat in and energy bills low, it also sealed in every exhale, cough, and dinner fart like a little time capsule. Historians still debate whether this shift to sealed homes was a triumph of engineering or a slow environmental misstep. Some say it saved billions in heating costs. Others argue it sacrificed human comfort and health for efficiency. The truth? Probably somewhere awkwardly in between, like most design decisions. Back in your bedroom, you roll over. The air conditioner hums, doing its one job perfectly, cooling. But here's the secret it won't tell you: it's not giving you new air. It's just remixing the same old molecules. Think of it like washing your dishes in the same sink full of water, over and over, without draining it. Yeah, the plates might feel cold. But are they really clean? In Japan, there's a saying, Maiku na kenki wa yumo samasu. It roughly translates to, poor ventilation wakes you from dreams. And yes, even ancient Japanese architects knew that air needed to move. Traditional homes had paper walls and sliding doors, designed to let rooms breathe. They didn't have AC. But they had airflow. And it mattered. Today, you might be sleeping in a high-tech tomb. Comfortable, sure. But maybe just a little stale. Want something weirder? In 1989, NASA studied houseplants for their ability to filter indoor air. They found that certain plants, like the spider plant and peace lily, could remove small amounts of toxins from sealed environments. Great! Except, it takes hundreds of those plants to make a dent in CO2 levels in just one room. So unless you're sleeping in a jungle, don't count on your monstera to be your personal carbon scrubber. Let's bring this back to you. Picture yourself breathing slowly, deeply, as you drift toward sleep. The CO2 from each breath lingers, mixing with the still air. You're not in danger. But your body is adjusting, quietly adapting to lower oxygen and higher carbon dioxide. It's working harder. And tomorrow morning, you'll feel it. Here's your next joke: you don't need a roommate who hogs the blanket, you've got carbon dioxide cuddling you all night long. Oh, and if you do have a roommate? Or a partner? Double the CO2. Double the fog. It's romantic until you both wake up groaning and can't remember your dreams or where the toothpaste is. Here's the final thought for this section: air isn't just something you breathe. It's something you live in. Think of it like water for a fish. When it's clean, everything works better. When it's stale, even the best mattress, the fanciest AC, and your favorite bedtime podcast won't save your sleepy brain. And guess what? You're not imagining those bad sleep nights. You might just be marinating in your own slowly rising CO2 cloud. So here you are, snug in your thoroughly modern bedroom, surrounded by gadgets that talk back, windows that never open, and maybe even a smart light bulb that dims itself based on your mood. But the air? It's the same as it's been for hours. Still. Heavy. Carbon-rich. Let's spin the clock back. Long before central AC, before bedrooms were Pinterest-perfect rectangles of drywall and LED strips, people slept with the air. Not against it. In the 1700s, a physician named John Arbuthnot warned that people sleeping in thick, unventilated rooms could suffer vapors of the head. Was that a technical term? Not quite. But what he meant was, people woke up cranky, confused, and sickly when they didn't get enough fresh air. Arbuthnot didn't know about CO2, but he definitely knew that stale air was the enemy of a good night's sleep. Fast forward a bit to the 1800s, many American and European homes featured sleeping porches. Yes, actual outdoor balconies with beds on them, usually on the second floor. In hot summers, families would haul mattresses out and sleep under mosquito nets. Why? Because even with the risk of bugs, stray raccoons, and the occasional spooky breeze, they knew fresh air meant better rest. And here's your quirky tidbit: some wealthier Victorians believed that breathing in cold night air improved character. Seriously. There was a short-lived trend where kids were encouraged to nap outdoors in winter to build moral resilience. Ice bath for the soul, apparently. Now, here's where it gets even weirder. In 1904, hospitals in New York began experimenting with open-air treatment for tuberculosis patients. Entire wards were built like barns, big, breezy, wall-less. The idea? Let the wind do the healing. And guess what? Patients did recover better in some of these wards. The air was moving, the lungs stayed clearer, and the CO2 levels never got a chance to linger. So what happened? Well, then came insulation. Modern construction. And, of course, air conditioning. Suddenly, we didn't need wind or breezes. We built walls that kept the outside out and the inside in, especially during energy crises like the 1970s oil shock. Builders were told to seal tight and insulate right. Energy savings trumped airflow. Comfort trumped circulation. And just like that, the sleeping porch became a relic. Bedrooms became boxes. And the air, well, it just sat there. Let's pause for a second and appreciate how different this is from our ancient ancestors. In many indigenous cultures, sleeping in well-ventilated, open shelters was the norm. Mongolian yurts, for example, have a central smoke hole at the top, not just for fire, but to let bad air out. In other words, they had a built-in CO2 escape hatch centuries before we even discovered what CO2 was. Meanwhile, your current bedroom might have a window that's sealed tighter than your phone case. You're more likely to get new followers than new air overnight. Historians still argue whether the rise of sealed, climate-controlled homes was truly progress, or just an expensive band-aid on bad design. Some architects now advocate for breathable homes, where natural airflow is prioritized again. But it's rare. It costs more. And let's be honest, you're not going to knock a hole in your wall just to let your dreams ventilate. So you do what everyone does, crank the AC, pull the blanket up, and forget about it. Here's something you probably haven't thought about: before air conditioning, people slept lighter. They had to. The room was warmer, the air changed constantly, and every dog barking in the distance reached their ears. But they also had more airflow. Today, we sleep deeper, at first, but we don't always sleep better. That's because high CO2 doesn't stop you from falling asleep. It just messes with what happens next. Let's say it again: just because the air feels cool doesn't mean it's fresh. Joke time: your great-great-grandfather slept on a wooden cot under a burlap sheet in 80-degree heat, swatting mosquitoes, but probably woke up more refreshed than you do in your memory foam cave with ambient pink noise and a $1,000 mattress. So here's where it all connects. The way we used to sleep might not have been comfortable, but it kept the air flowing. The way we sleep now feels comfortable, but often traps us in a bubble of CO2. There's a psychological twist, too. Studies show that people feel more secure in sealed spaces. It's a lizard brain thing: walls and doors mean safety. So over time, we started preferring small, closed sleeping quarters. Add in blackout curtains, soundproofing, and climate control, and you're basically nesting in a soft, silent chamber. Great for blocking out noise. Terrible for letting air move. You're not imagining the grogginess. It's not your diet, or your screen time, or Mercury retrograde. It might just be that the air you breathe for 1/3 of your life has quietly transformed from lifeline to low-key sleep saboteur. And hey, want to know something ironic? During the COVID-19 pandemic, outdoor dining exploded for safety. Open windows were mandated. We even installed HEPA filters in classrooms and workplaces. But at home? In your bedroom? Probably the same sealed environment. The one place you spend 8 hours breathing deeply was never updated. And guess what CO2 levels looked like in most pandemic home office setups? Often worse than public spaces. You went to work in your pajamas, and unknowingly bathed in carbon. So tonight, when you turn off the light and hear the gentle click of your AC, just remember, that sweet hum isn't bringing you anything new. It's just remixing what you already exhaled hours ago. You wake up in the morning, rub your eyes, and groan. Not because you had a late night. Not because you stayed up scrolling through every possible rabbit hole on TikTok. But because your head feels like a balloon. You stumble to the bathroom. The mirror greets you with that familiar zombie stare. And you think, why do I feel so foggy? You slept 8 hours, maybe even 9, but it's like your brain never showed up for the night shift. Let's peel back the curtain and look at what's really happening inside your body when CO2 levels get a little too comfortable. Carbon dioxide, in small doses, is natural. Every time you exhale, you're sending a puff of it into the world. But when it builds up, especially in a poorly ventilated space, your body starts to react. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But gradually, like a dimmer switch being turned down on your focus, energy, and clarity. At around 1000 ppm, parts per million, you start to feel a little sleepy. At 2000 ppm, concentration dips, and headaches start lurking. Go higher. Nausea, increased heart rate, dizziness. These are real symptoms reported in actual controlled sleep studies. But the scariest part is, you won't necessarily notice. You'll just feel off. Not sick. Just, like a sleep-deprived goldfish. Let's get technical for a moment, but keep it gentle. Your blood pH is tightly regulated. A rise in CO2 means more carbonic acid in your bloodstream. This nudges your pH lower, making it more acidic. Your body responds by increasing respiration, more breaths per minute, to flush the CO2 out. But here's the trap: when you're asleep, your breathing naturally slows. Your body doesn't know it's sitting in a CO2 sauna. So the acid builds. And builds. Quietly. Fun historical fact: in the 1800s, miners used to bring canaries into coal shafts because the birds would react quickly to rising CO2 or carbon monoxide levels. If the bird fell over, you left, fast. Your bedroom doesn't have a canary. It has you. Now here's something fringe, but fascinating. There are conspiracy corners of the internet where people claim CO2 buildup in bedrooms is the real reason for sleep paralysis. They argue that your brain partially wakes up in a panic while your muscles stay frozen, and rising CO2 is the spark. No solid evidence supports this yet, but it's a reminder of how little we truly understand about sleep and air quality. And it gets weirder. NASA, yep, the space people again, has published detailed research on how rising CO2 levels affect cognitive function. Astronauts in the International Space Station have complained about forgetfulness and mental slowness during extended missions. Turns out, even their high-tech life support systems don't always scrub CO2 fast enough. So if literal rocket scientists are getting foggy from stale air, what's happening in your 12 by 12 foot apartment? Let's bring it back to you. Your brain uses a ton of energy, about 20% of your body's total demand, even when you're asleep. Oxygen fuels that. But when CO2 pushes oxygen out of the bloodstream, yep, that happens, your neurons don't get the juice they need. Less oxygen means slower memory consolidation, fewer dreams, and more waking up like you just got hit with a sock full of oatmeal. Here's your joke for the section: if dreams are little movies your brain makes, then high CO2 is the low-budget sequel nobody asked for. Now, let's talk dreams, those weird nighttime movies you don't always remember. Research has found that people in high CO2 sleep environments report fewer dreams, less vivid imagery, and more disturbances. It's like your brain's director decided to skip special effects and go straight to a blank screen. Even more interesting, one small study had volunteers sleep in rooms with artificially increased CO2. They woke up more often. They moved more in their sleep. And many of them reported flat or emotionless dreams, like watching the news on mute. Historians still argue whether early studies of sleep in sealed rooms, some done in bunkers during World War II, were truly ethical or properly controlled. But the results were consistent: the air you sleep in absolutely shapes the quality of your rest. Oh, and remember, your brain isn't the only thing suffering. High CO2 levels can affect your cardiovascular system, too. Heart rate goes up slightly. Blood vessels in your brain dilate. Some researchers even believe long-term exposure to high nighttime CO2 can subtly contribute to hypertension and chronic fatigue. It's not instant. But it's a drip effect, night after night, year after year. And now for a quirky historical twist. Did you know that in 1930s Berlin, there were air cafes, where people could pay to sit in rooms with mechanically filtered, oxygen-enriched air? People swore it cured headaches and sluggishness. They'd sip coffee and read the paper in their oxygen booths. Sounds extreme, but maybe they were onto something. Compare that to your current situation: sealed bedroom, doors closed, windows locked, air conditioner on full blast. You've got climate control, but no airflow. And now, instead of an oxygen-rich, cafe experience, you're spending 8 hours slowly marinating in your own metabolic leftovers. So tomorrow morning, when you find yourself reaching for your third cup of coffee before noon, remember, it might not be burnout or stress. It might just be that you spent the night in a low-grade fog machine built by your own lungs. That ache behind your eyes? The weird memory lapses? That feeling that your dreams were just static on an old TV? Maybe it's not all in your head. Maybe it's in the air. The air conditioner is humming. It's 2 a.m., and your room feels perfect, cool, quiet, still. You're deep under the blankets, breathing softly. And while you're sleeping like a Netflix user after 6 episodes, your room is becoming something else entirely, a sealed microclimate, slowly building up carbon dioxide with every breath you and your AC don't exchange. Let's break this down simply. First, understand how an AC works, and what it doesn't do. Step 1, it cools the air. Yes, your AC lowers the temperature by pulling heat from inside and dumping it outside. But here's the trick. Step 2, it doesn't bring in new air. Most residential air conditioners recirculate the air inside your room. That means the same molecules get cooled over and over, but they don't get replaced. You're chilling your own exhaled air. Step 3, without ventilation, CO2 has nowhere to go. As you sleep and breathe, carbon dioxide builds up. If the room's sealed, windows closed, doors shut, vents off, nothing is flushing that CO2 out. Your AC unit. It doesn't help. It might even make things worse by giving a false sense of freshness. Now, let's add one more player to this game, mechanical ventilation, like exhaust fans, or systems that deliberately bring in outside air. Guess what? Most bedrooms don't have those. Kitchens and bathrooms, maybe. But your cozy little sanctuary? It's a CO2 trap. Here's a simple metaphor, imagine boiling soup with the lid on. The temperature stays steady, but the steam builds inside. If you never lift the lid, pressure rises. Same with CO2 in your bedroom. Your AC is managing the temperature, but the steam of carbon dioxide just builds quietly under the lid. Want a quirky comparison? In the 1960s, Soviet submarines had to install special scrubbers to absorb CO2 in long missions. If they didn't, crew members would pass out after just a few hours submerged, even with oxygen. Their air was cool. Their tech was advanced. But the CO2? Still deadly. You're not on a submarine. But if you're relying solely on AC without a fresh air source, the effect is surprisingly similar. Let's get into the trade-off, AC comfort versus air quality. This is the part most people miss. AC lowers temperature equals feels good. AC doesn't add oxygen or remove CO2 equals feels secretly bad. Your brain confuses cool with clean. Just because the room doesn't feel stuffy doesn't mean it's healthy. Here's your light joke for the night. Your AC is like that friend who says they'll help clean the house but just rearranges your stuff and calls it a day. Now for a quick real-world example. A 2019 study looked at dorm rooms with students who kept their AC on all night with windows closed. By morning, CO2 levels were often above 2000 ppm. The students didn't report feeling bad, but their reaction times, memory tests, and verbal reasoning took a serious hit. They didn't know their brains were slowed until someone measured it. Historians still argue whether air conditioning, one of the most transformative inventions of the 20th century, was a gift or a curse. It revolutionized productivity in hot climates. It enabled skyscrapers and modern cities. But it also created an illusion of breathable comfort. We sealed ourselves away from the outside world, thinking AC was enough. Even in modern buildings, many HVAC systems are split. Your AC unit may not be connected to the fresh air vents, meaning it never introduces outdoor air. The result? Chilled, stale air. Let's break the solution into manageable ideas. Want to fix this? 3 options, each with trade-offs. Option 1, open a window just a little. Even cracking it half an inch can allow CO2 to drift out. The cooler outdoor air often pulls indoor gases with it. Downside? Might let in heat, bugs, or noise. But airflow? Option 2, use an exhaust fan or air exchanger. Some modern homes have ERVs or HRVs, energy or heat recovery ventilators. These do bring in fresh air while maintaining temperature. Downside? Installation and cost. But very effective. Option 3, run a window fan on reverse. Point it outward. It pulls stale air out and naturally draws in fresher air through cracks and leaks. Cheap. Easy. Surprisingly powerful. Now, want to know how not to solve it? Air purifiers, great for dust and pollen. But most don't remove CO2. Houseplants, cute but sadly ineffective at night. Photosynthesis needs light. Scented candles or diffusers make the room smell fresh, but they don't change the gas makeup. In fact, they add combustion gases. Here's your weird fringe tidbit for tonight. In the early 2000s, some luxury hotels started offering oxygen enrichment in their top suites. Guests could sleep in rooms with pumped-in high CO2 air to avoid altitude sickness. The effect? People woke up feeling more refreshed, less groggy. Not magic. Just air done right. So what do we learn? Air conditioners don't clean your air. They don't add oxygen. They don't remove carbon dioxide. They feel fresh, but that's a sensory illusion. If you cool your room but seal it tight, you're trading thermal comfort for gas imbalance. Over one night, that's tolerable. Over years, it becomes a lifestyle of fatigue you might never trace back to something as invisible as CO2. Here's your last friendly reminder: sleep isn't just about silence or darkness or even softness. It's also about chemistry, oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. The cooler your room, the better. But only if the air is moving. Tomorrow night, when you turn that AC back on, just ask, is this cooling me, or slowly cooking my brain in invisible carbon fog? You wouldn't think NASA would care about your bedroom. But in a weird, roundabout way, they kind of do. Let's take a moment and float up, way up, to the International Space Station, ISS. It's a sealed environment with perfect climate control, constant airflow, and high-tech filters scrubbing the air. And even there, carbon dioxide is one of the biggest problems. Now zoom back to Earth. Your bedroom doesn't have those systems. No floating fans constantly moving air. No ion exchange filters. No emergency override buttons. Just you. An AC unit. 4 walls. And a slow, steady rise in CO2 overnight. NASA became obsessed with CO2 levels not because of sleep, but because astronauts started making more mistakes than expected during long missions. Their reflexes slowed. They struggled with memory. It wasn't until researchers took a closer look that they realized, CO2 levels were creeping up beyond safe thresholds. Even just a few hundred ppm above normal caused noticeable drops in cognitive performance. Now, apply that to your average apartment. A 2015 study simulated ISS conditions in a sealed environment. The result? Subjects exposed to 2,500 ppm of CO2 for just a few hours saw decision-making skills drop by 44%. That's like going from thoughtful adult to left keys in fridge again mode. Here's your first quirky detail: NASA's minimum alert threshold for CO2 on the ISS is 5,000 ppm. But astronauts often complain of headaches and fatigue well before it reaches that. So engineers lowered the ideal operational range to about 2,600 ppm. Your bedroom? If you've kept the door closed, windows shut, and AC running all night, you could very realistically be hitting 1,500 to 2,000 ppm by dawn. That's, Houston, we have brain fog territory. And here's the kicker: you're not floating in zero gravity. You're not even working. You're trying to rest. But your body? Still responding to air chemistry like it's a silent emergency. You might ask, okay, but I'm not an astronaut. Why should I care? Well, what happens when you stack 200 plus nights of high CO2 sleep each year? That's over 1,600 hours a year of compromised brain recovery. Your synapses don't reset properly. Your hormones don't balance efficiently. Your dreams don't consolidate into memory. Basically, you're giving your brain less deep clean time, and over time, that builds up. Here's your light joke: astronauts get 16 sunrises a day and real-time oxygen monitoring. You get one sunrise and a smart lamp named Luna that slowly turns purple while your brain gasps for fresh air. Want more eerie comparisons? Let's look at another extreme sealed environment: submarines. In both US and Russian nuclear submarines, air quality is monitored obsessively. They use chemical scrubbers, air compressors, and CO2 absorption units, because even slightly elevated CO2 makes sailors drowsy, irritable, and mistake-prone. When they simulated the same CO2 levels in military training facilities, decision-making plummeted. Now think of college dorms, shared bedrooms, or small apartments with 2 roommates and no ventilation. Those can hit 2,500 to 3,000 ppm by early morning. And instead of scrubbers, you get a window you might crack open on weekends. Historians still argue whether indoor air standards have kept up with modern life. OSHA guidelines for workplace air are strict, but residential building codes? Often silent on CO2. Why? Because CO2 isn't classified as an immediate, toxic threat at low levels. But non-toxic doesn't mean harmless. Back to NASA, they don't mess around. Their scientists now include CO2 tolerance drift in astronaut training. That means, after long exposure to elevated CO2, the brain starts thinking it's normal. You don't notice symptoms anymore, but your performance still suffers. That explains why so many people wake up tired, adjust to it, and just blame their lifestyle. They've acclimated to poor air, not knowing it's sabotaging their mornings. Now here's a fringe tidbit to file under, weird but true. There's an experimental therapy called mild hypercapnia, where researchers intentionally increase CO2 to study stress, panic disorders, or altered states of consciousness. Basically, they let you breathe higher CO2 to simulate psychological pressure. That foggy, tight-chested feeling you get after waking up in a sealed room? A very, very soft version of that. So what does NASA do that you don't? They monitor CO2 levels in real time. Actively scrub CO2 with fan-driven chemical systems. Prioritize airflow before temperature. Train astronauts to recognize cognitive symptoms. You turn on the AC. Maybe open the window if it feels stuffy. Have no idea what your CO2 levels are right now. Blame your brain fog on blue light and bad dreams. Here's one more comparison. The average ISS module is about 400 cubic meters. Your bedroom? Maybe 40. That's 1/10 the space. That means your room becomes space dangerous 10 times faster, and no one's calling Houston if you get cranky at breakfast. So next time you wake up and reach for coffee before you've even said, "Good morning," consider this: your grogginess might not be burnout. It might be unmonitored space station air, minus the view of Earth. And you didn't even leave the bed. Picture this: you wake up in the morning, your eyes still half closed, and your thoughts, not quite thoughts yet. More like fragments. What time is it? Where's my phone? Why do I feel like a crusty croissant that's been left out overnight? You slept. You didn't party. You even skipped dessert. So why do you feel like your brain got steamrolled? Let's dig a little deeper, right into your brain chemistry. Sleep isn't just off mode for your body. It's a highly orchestrated neurological ballet. Your brain moves through different stages: light sleep, deep sleep, REM. Each has its own tempo, its own purpose. Deep sleep cleans out cellular waste and restores energy. REM helps consolidate memory, sharpen emotions, and, bonus, produce those delightfully weird dreams where you're trying to take an exam on a flying bus. But carbon dioxide? It's like the guy who crashes the dance, steps on everyone's toes, and farts mid-spin. When CO2 levels rise in your sleeping environment, your brain's chemistry shifts, subtly but consistently. It becomes harder to stay in deep sleep. You bounce between stages more often. And even if you don't wake up fully, your body acts like it's under mild stress. Here's how that plays out: your cortisol rises. Cortisol is your body's stress hormone. It should be low at night and rise gently near sunrise. But when CO2 builds up, your body interprets it as a signal of suffocation. Not panic-level suffocation, but a gentle whisper that says, "Hey, oxygen's dropping, maybe start prepping for doom." That nudges cortisol up too early. You wake up prematurely. Or feel unrest, like your alarm clock is dragging you out of molasses. Your melatonin gets confused. Melatonin helps regulate your sleep cycle. But it's surprisingly sensitive to environmental stress. Noisy room. Poor lighting. High CO2. It all affects melatonin synthesis. And if melatonin's off, your sleep rhythm unravels like a cheap sweater in a washing machine. Your glymphatic system, yes, that's a real thing, slows down. This system is like your brain's nighttime janitor. It washes out toxins and leftover neurotransmitters. But it relies on good oxygen flow to work efficiently. High CO2 means less oxygen, which means the janitor gets sluggish. Result? You wake up with brain clutter, more forgetful, more more irritable, and definitely more likely to put your keys in the fridge. Quirky fact time: in 2013, scientists discovered that the glymphatic system might even play a role in clearing beta amyloid, the protein associated with Alzheimer's. So yes, your sleep quality might directly affect your long-term brain health. Now let's turn to dreams, those fleeting, bizarre nightly movies. Many people report more vivid, emotionally intense dreams when CO2 is low and sleep quality is high. That makes sense. REM sleep, where most dreams occur, is sensitive to environmental disruption. High CO2 can interfere with this stage, leading to fewer dreams, or dreams that feel flat or disconnected. But here's a fringe tidbit: there's a theory that certain types of dream content, claustrophobic spaces, drowning, choking, could be triggered by subtle carbon dioxide buildup. It's not proven, but in sleep labs, participants exposed to slightly elevated CO2 reported more distress-themed dreams. So that nightmare about being stuck in an elevator with your high school gym teacher? Yeah, maybe blame your room's ventilation. Historians still debate how much environment affects dream content. Freud thought it was all inner conflict. Jung thought it was symbols from the collective unconscious. But modern sleep science says, hey, maybe it's just your brain reacting to a slow drop in oxygen and a quiet rise in gas your AC isn't clearing. Let's jump to a little real-world stat. A 2020 Harvard-linked sleep study found that participants exposed to CO2 levels of 2,500 ppm or higher during sleep had up to a 17% decrease in deep sleep time and up to a 30% increase in nighttime awakenings. And here's the twist: none of them remembered waking up. Their bodies did. But their minds were just groggy the next day. Now, how about the long term? Chronic exposure to poor nighttime air doesn't just mess with dreams. It reshapes how your brain performs during the day. You might struggle to concentrate, forget words mid-sentence, feel emotional for no reason, snap at people before coffee, scroll mindlessly because real tasks feel overwhelming. And over time, you normalize it. You tell yourself, I'm just not a morning person. But maybe you were, before you started sleeping in a CO2-heavy shoebox. Here's your light joke: if REM is your brain's film festival, sleeping in a sealed room turns it into a badly edited student project with no budget and way too much fog machine. Want to test this? Try sleeping one night with a window cracked open, even just a tiny bit. Or put a fan near the door to gently push air out. Do nothing else different. Then see how you feel in the morning. Odds are, clearer head, fewer yawns, and dreams you actually remember. Because once your brain dances with clean air, it doesn't want to go back to waltzing in a carbon cloud. So as you curl up tonight and your AC kicks in with that satisfying whoosh, just remember, it's cooling your body, but your brain wants airflow, not just frost. Tomorrow's clarity depends on tonight's chemistry. You know how sometimes you wake up and your body feels heavier? Like your limbs are reluctant to rejoin reality, and your brain hits the snooze button on itself. You think, maybe I slept wrong, or maybe it's just a Monday thing. But what if it's not you, it's the air? Let's shift gears and talk about your body's physical response to sleeping in a high CO2 environment. We've already looked at your brain, its fog, its weird dreams, its slow start. But your body? Oh, it's fighting a whole quiet war overnight. And you're sleeping through it. Step 1, your lungs start to work harder. CO2 is a waste product. Your body needs to get rid of it, just like it needs to expel heat or digest dinner. But unlike other systems, breathing is mostly automatic. When CO2 levels outside your body rise, your respiratory rate goes up slightly, even in sleep. You might not notice it, but your diaphragm does. Your body starts shallow breathing more frequently to maintain the oxygen-CO2 balance in your blood. The result? Lower sleep efficiency. You spend more time in light sleep, and less in the stages that matter. Here's your light joke: think of your lungs like tiny overworked employees. When CO2 builds up in the office overnight, they don't complain, they just breathe faster and sigh a lot. Step 2, your heart kicks in. High CO2 equals more acidity in your blood. Your heart doesn't like that. It starts beating just a bit faster to keep oxygen moving. That's called mild tachycardia, and it can happen even in healthy people during poor air exposure. Over time, it adds stress to your cardiovascular system. This isn't, I'm going to drop dead from sleeping wrong, stress. It's more like, my heart is annoyed every night and has started sending passive-aggressive signals to my nervous system. In people who already have mild hypertension or sleep apnea, high CO2 makes it worse. It can even lead to nighttime blood pressure spikes, ones you don't notice until they mess with your energy the next day. Now for a quirky historical detour. In the 1800s, doctors believed that night air was poisonous. That's why people closed windows at dusk, wore scarves indoors, and developed things like bed curtains to filter the air around the sleeper. Ironically, they were protecting themselves from cold, not realizing they were inviting CO2 buildup by closing airflow. Historians still argue whether this fear of night air was based on bad science or just a natural response to illnesses like cholera and tuberculosis, which seem to spread in dense, still environments. But here's the twist, they weren't totally wrong. Still air equals stagnant air equals high CO2. The mechanism was off, but the instinct? Surprisingly useful. Step 3, your muscles recover slower. Sleep is when your muscles repair themselves. Tiny tears from walking, typing, working out, all patched during rest. This process depends on oxygen delivery. And CO2 competes with oxygen. When the air in your room gets thick with carbon dioxide, your muscles get fewer nutrients and less efficient waste removal. Result? You might wake up sore or stiff, even if you didn't do anything demanding the day before. Now, have you ever had that strange feeling of waking up with a tight jaw or tense shoulders? Sure, it might be stress. Or, it might be your body trying to compensate for less than ideal air. Here's a fringe tidbit from the world of athletics, some elite endurance athletes now sleep in altitude simulation tents to improve performance. These tents reduce oxygen levels on purpose to train the body to adapt. But they also monitor CO2 extremely carefully, because even a small increase ruins the entire effect and makes recovery worse. In other words, they're using low oxygen as a tool, but they know bad CO2 equals bad gains. Now flip that around. You're not trying to win gold. You're just trying to wake up with energy. But you're accidentally creating the same conditions as those altitude tents, minus the oxygen monitor, minus the coaching staff, minus the medals. What about your metabolism? Fun fact, poor sleep from bad air disrupts your glucose regulation. One study showed that people sleeping in high CO2 environments had slightly higher fasting glucose levels the next morning. Over time, this can lead to increased insulin resistance, aka the path to fatigue, weight gain, and grumpy mornings. Your appetite also changes. CO2-rich sleep may reduce leptin, the I'm full hormone, and increase ghrelin, the I want 3 croissants now hormone. You're not imagining those breakfast cravings. They're chemically real. You're eating to recover from sleep that didn't fully restore you. Light joke. Sure, your sealed bedroom sleep is turning your metabolism into a confused intern who can't tell if it's breakfast time or hibernation. So how do you feel it the next day? You wake up. Craving carbs. Feeling sore. With a mild headache. A little more emotional. Kind of, slow. That's the CO2 hangover. Not dramatic. Just consistent. And subtle enough that you never blame the air, you blame yourself. I should sleep earlier. I need more magnesium. Nah. You might just need more airflow. Even pets feel it. Ever notice how dogs reposition a lot during the night in small rooms? Or how cats will leave a warm, cozy bedroom to sleep near a crack under a door? They don't have CO2 sensors, but they do respond to subtle air quality changes. You, being human, have learned to override your instincts with logic and routines. Close the door, keep the cool in. But maybe your cat has it right. Tonight, when you lie down and pull up the covers, just know, your body isn't entering idle mode. It's kicking off a complex repair sequence that relies on clean chemistry. Oxygen in, carbon dioxide out. Easy. Basic. Essential. And if you get it right, the next morning won't feel like a groggy reboot. It'll feel like you actually slept. Let's talk about the silent villain in all of this, routine. You do the same thing every night, without thinking. Shower, maybe snack, phone time, brush teeth, lights out. You close the door to trap the cold from your AC. Maybe you tuck a towel under the crack to block hallway light or noise. Then you sleep. And night after night, the carbon dioxide builds, just a little more. Nothing dramatic. Nothing scary. But after a week, a month, a year, you've built a perfect little bubble of sleep sabotage and called it comfort. This isn't a horror story. It's just a misunderstanding. Most people think about sleep in terms of comfort inputs, pillows, sheets, mattress firmness. Some go deeper: blackout curtains, white noise machines, chamomile tea, magnesium supplements. You optimize the vibe. But air, that invisible, tasteless, odorless thing you spend 8 hours inhaling, that gets ignored. There's a term you might not have heard: sick building syndrome. It's used when people experience chronic symptoms: fatigue, headaches, poor concentration, linked to time spent in certain indoor spaces. These aren't haunted houses. They're offices, dorms, homes. The cause? Often poor ventilation. Not mold. Not toxins. Just plain stale air and CO2 buildup. Now take that concept and shrink it down to one room. Your bedroom might be a sick room, and you've just gotten used to it. Historians still argue whether the rise of sealed, energy-efficient buildings was worth the hidden cost. Sure, your electric bill is lower. But what about your productivity? Your focus? Your health? Let's get even more specific. Modern apartments often use tight construction, meaning the building is sealed as much as possible to reduce energy loss. Great for HVAC efficiency. Terrible for air exchange. In many newer buildings, the only outdoor air you get is when you open a window. There are no passive vents. No air leaks. You're in a Tupperware box. Here's a quirky fact: in Japan, residential construction codes require mechanical ventilation systems in homes. Builders must prove that air inside won't exceed a certain CO2 threshold. In the US, many homes, especially older ones, aren't held to any standard for nighttime air quality. That means if you close your door and run your AC, no law, sensor, or system stop CO2 from rising all night. You want a fun science demonstration? Here's one you can try. Get a basic CO2 sensor online, they're cheap. Put it in your bedroom. Measure levels at bedtime. Then again at 2 a.m. Then again at 6 a.m. You'll be shocked. Even with AC running, the numbers climb steadily. In some cases, they double overnight. 800 ppm at bedtime turns into 1,600 by dawn. And you wonder why waking up feels like peeling yourself off the mattress. And here's your light joke: if your room were a soda, you'd wake up as flat as a 2-liter bottle left open on the counter. Let's talk symptoms again, because they're sneaky. You don't sleep through the night. You shift more. Wake briefly. Don't remember it. You wake up feeling like you didn't sleep at all. You crave sugar or caffeine immediately. Your mood is off. More irritable, less motivated, kind of emotionally blurry. Your focus sucks. You open 5 tabs and forget what any of them were for. Over time, you think, that's just how I am. But maybe it's not you, maybe it's your routine. Now let's contrast that with a forgotten luxury: the ventilated bedroom. Think, window open a crack, door ajar, ceiling fan circulating air. Maybe not as chilled. But the air moves. CO2 doesn't build. And you wake up feeling light. You remember your dreams. You don't need 3 coffees just to blink normally. It's not theoretical. It's proven. A 2016 study from the Netherlands tested students sleeping in rooms with windows open versus closed. Result? Those with ventilation had higher sleep efficiency, faster reaction times in the morning, better mood, fewer mid-sleep awakenings. They also reported feeling less groggy and more refreshed, even though the temperature was slightly less comfortable. And here's the irony: we chase high-end sleep products to fix what might be an air issue. Fancy pillows. White heavy check mark. Weighted blankets. White heavy check mark. $300 white noise machine. White heavy check mark. Basic air exchange. Cross mark. You're trying to paint a masterpiece while someone keeps turning the lights off. Want a fringe tip? Some biohackers now use CO2 sensors that connect to smart plugs. If CO2 crosses a certain threshold, the sensor turns on a fan, opens a smart window, or alerts them to ventilate. It's low-tech science fiction. But the results? Fewer headaches. Better sleep scores. Less caffeine the next day. Look, no one's saying throw your AC out the window. But what if, just once a week, you opened that window with the AC running? Or put a fan by the door? Or slept with the door ajar? Try it. See how your body responds. Because when your routine quietly becomes your enemy, the fix isn't always drastic. Sometimes it's just air. And the body you live in, the one you want to nourish and restore each night, it notices. Even if you don't. Let's talk numbers. Not boring statistics, but your numbers. How many breaths do you take each night? Roughly 12 to 20 per minute. That's 720 to 1,200 per hour. Multiply by 8 hours of sleep, and you're looking at between 5,000 and 10,000 breaths, in a single night. That's 5,000 to 10,000 exhalations of carbon dioxide into the same small space. If you share the room, double it. Add a dog, triple it. Oh, and remember, most pets don't exhale oxygen. Sorry, Fluffy. Now imagine this, every breath you take fills the room just a little more. Each exhale adds to a growing invisible pool of CO2, slowly creeping up your walls like a ghost you can't see, smell, or hear. And your air conditioner, humming faithfully, doesn't stop it. It spreads it. Let's walk through what's actually happening in your room over time. You start at 400 to 600 ppm CO2, normal levels if the room was ventilated during the day. You close the door, turn on the AC, and go to sleep. By midnight, levels might hit 1000 ppm. By 3 a.m., 1500 to 2000. By dawn, you're deep in brain fog territory. Now imagine doing that every single night, for years. Here's your light joke, it's like eating junk food for years and wondering why your energy is weird. Only this time, the junk is invisible and smells like nothing. CO2 is sneaky. It's not like smoke. It doesn't sting your eyes. There's no fire alarm for it. And because it's technically not classified as a pollutant, there's no urgency to control it in homes. Workplaces? Yes. Submarines? Definitely. But your bedroom? Nope. No rules. No sensors. No help. Let's throw in a real-world example. In a 2021 Danish sleep study, researchers placed CO2 monitors in 200 participants' bedrooms for 2 weeks. They found that over 60% of participants exceeded 1,500 ppm by morning, with 30% hitting over 2,200 ppm. These people weren't sick. They weren't sleeping in closets. They were just living normally, with doors shut and AC running. So what did they feel? More reported waking up tired. More caffeine consumed before 10 a.m. More emotional volatility, a nice way to say, they got snippy. Lower cognitive test scores, especially for attention span and short-term memory. Still think you're just not a morning person? Let's take a short detour through history, back to the Victorian era. People used to sleep with bedroom windows open even in winter. It wasn't just to cool down, it was because stale air was considered dangerous. They didn't have CO2 monitors or sleep labs, but they noticed that fresh air sleep felt better. Historians still argue whether these habits were driven by sanitation fears or just common sense. Either way, the result? Lower overnight CO2 and fewer complaints of sickly mornings. Let's zoom in on some other invisible CO2 sources. It's not just you breathing. You've got electronics. Some plug-in devices emit trace gases, including CO2 or VOCs. Candles or incense, anything that burns, even slowly, adds carbon dioxide. Your own body heat, warmer air circulates less efficiently, especially in sealed spaces. Poor airflow patterns, cool air drops, warm air rises. If your AC is ceiling mounted, it may trap warm, CO2-heavy air near your face. Neat. You're building a microclimate, night after night. And it doesn't matter if your room is clean, minimal, or Pinterest-worthy. If the air isn't moving, it's getting stale. Want a fringe tip? Some people now use carbon dioxide logging apps paired with Wi-Fi-enabled sensors. These apps track their room's CO2 levels over time and adjust window fans or vents automatically. It's like a Fitbit for your air. The result? Better REM percentages. Clearer morning mind. Less groggy, "What day is it?" face. You don't have to go that far. But understanding the pattern is enough. Let's do a mini thought experiment. Imagine tonight you sleep in a perfectly ventilated room. Window cracked. Fan on low. CO2 stays under 800 ppm all night. You breathe clean air. Your body doesn't have to compensate. You get real deep sleep. Your glymphatic system scrubs your brain like a luxury car wash. Your cortisol behaves. Your dreams are rich and structured. Then you wake up. Not in a daze. But with clarity. Hunger, not cravings. Calm, not clumsiness. Thoughts that don't dissolve mid-sentence. Now contrast that with a sealed box, AC-only night. You're cool, but chemically cluttered. Breathing slightly shallow. Your body knows it's under low oxygen pressure, even if you don't. Sleep gets fragmented. You wake up groggy. And you blame stress, your phone, or late-night snacking. But all you really did, was sleep in a box of your own breath. Here's your last cheeky thought for this section. Your room doesn't need to feel stuffy to be stuffy. And if the air in your bedroom had a voice, it might whisper, "You're marinating." Let's go from your bedroom, to the entire planet. You see, your personal CO2 bubble might seem small. But zoom out, and suddenly your nightly air routine connects to one of the most pressing issues of our time: indoor climate control and global carbon emissions. Wait, don't yawn just yet. This isn't a guilt trip, it's a weird, eye-opening loop where personal comfort and planetary impact actually mirror each other. Here's the deal: air conditioning, while miraculous, is a bit of a climate paradox. Globally, ACs account for about 10% of all electricity consumption. That's not a typo. That's trillions of kilowatt-hours per year. Why? Because billions of people want the same thing you do at night: cool air, quiet sleep, and relief from heat. Here's the irony: the hotter the planet gets, the more we use AC, which contributes to emissions that make the planet hotter. It's the climate version of eating because you're sad, and then feeling sad because you ate too much. A feedback loop. A carbon donut. And indoors? That same feedback shows up in miniature. You run the AC to cool the room, you seal the room to keep cool air in, CO2 builds up overnight, sleep quality drops, you feel tired, you run the AC again the next night because you think, "At least I'll feel physically better." Historians still argue whether the invention of the air conditioner in 1902 by Willis Carrier was a greater contribution to comfort or catastrophe. It revolutionized cities like Dubai, Las Vegas, and Singapore. It allowed data centers to exist. But it also created indoor isolation from natural airflow, a shift in how humans interact with the environment that we still haven't fully adapted to. Back to you. You, with your tiny box of chilled air. Your air conditioner doesn't just move air. It creates a sealed relationship between you and your room, a dependency. You start to think you can't sleep without that hum. You become less tolerant of summer heat, less likely to open a window. And all the while, CO2, both from your body and the electricity powering your unit, builds up. Here's a quirky twist for you: the ancient Egyptians cooled their rooms by soaking mats in water and hanging them in windows. As hot desert air passed through, it evaporated the water, cooling the air. It was the OG swamp cooler, passive, natural, no emissions. Compare that to the roaring, refrigerant-based beasts we use today: mechanical, sealed, powerful, and silent about what they trap inside. Now, let's get weirdly sci-fi for a moment. In the near future, architects are exploring breathing buildings, structures designed to mimic lungs. They naturally inhale and exhale air, balancing oxygen and CO2 without mechanical fans. It's passive, elegant, and doesn't rely on sealed systems. Some high-end eco-homes already use these systems. They sleep cooler and cleaner, not because of fancier ACs, but because they've solved the air exchange problem at the architectural level. But what if your home doesn't breathe? Then you have to. Constantly. Harder. More often. All night long. Your lungs do what your room won't. Let's imagine a world where, every morning, you could see the CO2 cloud hanging in your room. Picture it like a subtle green mist floating 6 inches above your face. Would you sleep there again? Probably not. You'd open the window. Maybe run a fan. Maybe, just maybe, you'd rethink sealing the door. But CO2 is invisible. Odorless. And the body adapts. That's the danger. Not the poison. The gradual adaptation to a suboptimal normal. Here's a light joke: if your room had a breathalyzer, it'd revoke your sleeping license before sunrise. So what's the takeaway here? Air conditioning isn't the enemy. Stale air is. It's not about giving up comfort. It's about pairing it with flow. You want to cool your room? Great. Just let the air move. Let the old air leave. Let the oxygen replace what you've exhaled. And here's the lovely surprise: in many climates, nighttime air is naturally cooler. A cracked window or gentle fan can assist your AC, not fight it. The key is direction. Let the cool in. Push the stale out. Here's a real-life case study. In Germany, many schools adopted CO2 monitors in classrooms post-pandemic. What they found shocked even the teachers. CO2 levels would rise above 2000 ppm within 45 minutes of a full class. They implemented 5-minute airing breaks every hour, open windows wide, flush the room, and test scores and behavior improved within weeks. Now imagine that on a micro scale, in your bedroom, each night. Maybe you don't need to tear out your HVAC system. Maybe it's as simple as pairing technology with old instincts. Open the window. Crack the door. Let a fan whisper your breath away into the night. You've already got the comfort. Add the chemistry. Because your sleep isn't just about feeling cool. It's about waking up alive. Let's bring it back to you, lying there, eyes shut, drifting into sleep. You might think of sleep as slipping into unconsciousness. But what you're really doing is handing the keys over to your autonomic nervous system, saying, "Hey, take care of things for a bit. I trust you." And in most cases, it does. Your breathing slows. Your muscles relax. Hormones kick into their night shifts. Repair begins. But what happens when the air you're breathing, the only air you get for the next 7 or 8 hours, slowly, silently turns into something your body has to struggle with? Let's talk autonomic overdrive. Sounds fancy, but here's what it means: if the CO2 level in your room gets too high, your body interprets it as a problem. Not a full-blown crisis, but something close to a whispering alarm. Your brainstem doesn't wake you up fully, but it keeps parts of your nervous system on edge. The vagus nerve doesn't get to relax. The parasympathetic rest and digest mode never takes full control. You're resting, but you're not really restoring. And here's the kicker: you'll never know. You might sleep through the night and still feel wired, tense, edgy in the morning. Not because of a bad dream. Not because of your phone. But because your body was trying to breathe better all night. Let's talk about your respiratory drive for a moment. You might assume it's triggered by lack of oxygen, but nope. It's CO2 buildup that your body tracks most sensitively. The medulla oblongata, the primal part of your brain, monitors CO2 levels constantly. When those levels rise, even slightly, it sends signals to speed up your breathing. Even in sleep. Even in deep sleep. And guess what? Every time your body does that, it bumps you up from deep sleep into lighter sleep stages. Sometimes even micro wake-ups. It's not the dream that broke your sleep. It's your lungs, whispering to your brain, "This air is too thick." Let's sprinkle in some science. A 2018 sleep lab study found that people exposed to 1,200 plus ppm CO2 had twice as many arousals per hour of sleep than those in ventilated rooms. But here's the kicker: less than 10% of those arousals were remembered. They slept through them, technically. Which brings us to a quirky historical practice: segmented sleep. In medieval Europe, people often had a first sleep and a second sleep, with a wakeful period in between, sometimes lasting up to an hour. They'd pray, talk, or read before returning to bed. Historians still argue whether this was cultural or biological. Some say it was tied to circadian rhythm. But here's the theory twist: many of those homes had fires burning all night and poor ventilation. That mid-sleep wake-up? Maybe not a quirk. Maybe just high CO2. Let's move to another piece of your biology, your immune system. Your body repairs and strengthens its defenses while you sleep. It produces cytokines, proteins that help fight infection, rebalances inflammation, and even refines immune memory. But high CO2, even at moderate levels, has been shown in animal studies to blunt immune responses. It affects how well cells communicate. It can interfere with normal melatonin function, which also influences immunity. So yes, if you're always waking up with a slightly scratchy throat, or feeling more vulnerable to colds than usual, check the air, not just your vitamin C. Here's a fringe but fascinating tidbit: in some military sleep studies, bunkrooms with poor airflow saw higher instances of minor infections and skin irritation, not because of bacteria floating around, but because soldiers' bodies were under air quality stress during rest. That's right, your body can't fight off the world if it's fighting the room it sleeps in. Let's not forget hormones. High CO2 affects testosterone, growth hormone, and insulin regulation. It tilts the scale towards stress hormones. Over time, you feel it not just in your head, but in your waistline, your energy, your sex drive, your motivation. All because the body's deep sleep cycle gets disrupted. Night after night. Here's your light joke: your bedroom isn't a gym, but sleep is when your body lifts the heaviest weight of all, repairing you. Add too much CO2, and suddenly it's like doing squats underwater. So how do you take back control? No, you don't need a full home ventilation system. You just need awareness plus airflow. Here's your checklist. Crack the window, even an inch helps. Place a fan across from it for a flow-through effect. Avoid sealing your door completely. Keep AC on if needed, but pair it with passive ventilation. Skip candles or anything that burns while sleeping. Avoid overstuffed rooms with lots of clutter. More things equals less air movement. Consider a CO2 monitor if you want data. Most people are shocked by what they see. And if you want a bonus tip, breathe nasally while sleeping. Mouth breathing increases CO2 retention. If you tend to sleep with your mouth open, explore gentle training, like mouth taping or elevation changes, but only if it's safe and comfortable for you. Because in the end, you don't need to radically change your life. You just need to let your room breathe, so you can. You're not fragile. You're just finely tuned. And your body, like your phone, charges best when it's not overheating in a sealed case. So tonight, do yourself a quiet favor. Make space for the air to move. Give your body the chemistry it's been asking for in whispers. You might not hear the difference. But come morning, you'll feel it. By now, you probably see your bedroom a little differently. Not just as a place with pillows and comforters and string lights and blackout curtains, but as a sealed ecosystem, where the balance of gases, temperature, and movement silently shapes how your body recovers. And at the heart of it all, the unsung player, carbon dioxide. Let's give you a metaphor. Imagine your bedroom is a tiny spaceship. You're the astronaut. Your mission: restore your energy reserves overnight. Simple. But what happens if the oxygen starts dropping, and CO2 levels creep up? Well, NASA has already answered that question. On the International Space Station, astronauts have to keep CO2 below 5,000 ppm. But even slightly above 1,000 ppm, astronauts report difficulty concentrating, headaches, irritability, sleep disturbances. Sound familiar? Here's your quirky historical detour. In 1969, during the Apollo 13 mission, one of the biggest life or death problems wasn't the explosion, it was CO2 buildup in the lunar module. The astronauts literally had to construct a makeshift CO2 filter with duct tape and parts from other systems. Historians still argue whether that improvised solution saved their lives more than the navigation math. Either way, it was CO2, not oxygen, that nearly ended the mission. Back to you. You're not in space. But your closed bedroom? Not so different. No fresh air in. Only CO2 out. And unlike astronauts, you don't have a ground team monitoring your ppm levels. You don't have warning lights or alarms. You just feel tired. Foggy. Off. And that's the trickiest part of all this. High CO2 doesn't make you scream. It doesn't suffocate you. It just quietly steals your clarity. So let's flip things for a moment and imagine the opposite. A well-ventilated room. Cool, not just from the AC, but because fresh night air trickles in. A fan across the room nudges the atmosphere. Your breath is recycled, not trapped. And while you sleep, your body fully drops into deep stages. Your lymphatic system clears. Your muscles repair. Your memory consolidates. You wake up. Not okay. Not survived. But truly restored. Here's your light joke: in this version of your sleep, your brain throws a party, and everyone RSVP'd, even dopamine. Let's zoom in now on what this means for your day-to-day performance. Better sleep, better air, and lower CO2 levels are directly linked to sharper memory. You remember names, where you left your keys, and why you walked into that room. Improved decision-making, less impulse-driven, more clarity-driven choices. Better mood regulation, you don't snap at texts or burn breakfast in a rage spiral. Increased energy without caffeine, like a cheat code for mornings. Healthier metabolic function, your body uses energy better. Fewer sugar crashes. More stability. Boosted creativity, your brain has space to wander and solve. All of this, and yet the solution isn't some mystery supplement. It's not infrared sauna therapy. It's not blue light glasses or adaptogenic mushroom tinctures. It's air. Moving. Clean. Free. Let's do a little reset here. A checklist, not for your sleep gear, but for your air habits. White heavy checkmark before bed: open a window or crack a door for 10 to 15 minutes. Let your room breathe before you do. White heavy checkmark during sleep: allow some air exchange. Even a small fan near a cracked door can shift the CO2 trajectory. White heavy checkmark in the morning: open windows fully for 10 minutes, even if just while brushing your teeth. White heavy checkmark bonus: if you have a CO2 sensor, aim to stay below 1000 ppm overnight. Under 800 is even better. Let's not forget another invisible benefit: your relationships. When you wake up groggy, moody, and slow, you show up to life a little off. You snap more. Laugh less. Withdraw faster. You don't mean to. It's just harder to process connection when your brain didn't finish last night's repairs. But when you sleep clean, you show up fully. There's a fringe theory, lighthearted, but oddly accurate, that the most romantic thing you can do isn't breakfast in bed, it's cracking the window the night before. Here's a final thought experiment for this section. Imagine waking up tomorrow in a room where the air feels like a forest. You stretch. You breathe in, and instead of that stale, recycled warmth, you get crispness. Space. Freshness. Your eyes open fully. Your thoughts don't lag. You make a good breakfast. Your feet feel lighter. You smile faster. That's not a miracle. That's what happens when your sleep finally stops suffocating itself quietly. And you deserve that. Every night. Not just on vacation. So maybe tonight's the night you become your own ground control. Window cracked. Fan on. Light sheet. Room ready. And you launch. You've made it this far, and now you know, your room isn't just a box with walls. It's a microclimate. A breathing space, or not. And the difference between just another night and real rest? It might be hiding in your exhale. Let's bring in one more dimension: your future self. What happens if you don't change anything? You go to sleep in the same sealed room. You wake up tired, sometimes groggy, sometimes okay. You brush it off. One morning becomes 10, then 100. You start saying things like, I don't sleep well unless I'm exhausted. I'm just a heavy sleeper. My brain doesn't really kick in until lunch. Coffee is my personality. And that becomes normal. But here's the uncomfortable truth: it's not just about bad mornings. Over time, chronic exposure to mild CO2 elevation starts wearing on your long-term cognitive performance. Memory dulls. Reaction time slows. Emotional resilience dips. You're not falling apart, you're just slowly dulling. And no one connects it to air. Because who thinks about CO2 at bedtime? Let's layer in some science. A 2015 Harvard study tested students in simulated dorm rooms with different CO2 levels, 550 ppm, 945 ppm, and 1400 ppm. That's not a huge range, right? But the performance differences were stunning. Students in high CO2 rooms performed up to 60% worse on basic decision-making tasks. 60%. No toxins. No sleep loss. Just air that wasn't being refreshed. Historians still argue whether industrial architecture, designed for insulation and efficiency, accidentally created generations of underperforming minds. It wasn't malice. Just miscalculated silence. Let's go personal again. You've probably noticed that when you sleep in the mountains, by the ocean, or even just in a well-ventilated cabin, you wake up clearer. It's not just nature's beauty. It's chemistry. The oxygen content is high, and CO2 disperses easily. You breathe deeply all night, and your body responds with quiet joy. Back home. Sealed windows. Recirculated air. And a slow descent into fog. Here's a fringe story. Some elite programmers, yes, coders, have started remote working in rural airrooms, not for the view, but for the air. They noticed their deep focus coding sessions got better when sleeping in low CO2 environments. They didn't need Pomodoro timers or nootropics. They just needed their brains fully oxygenated when they woke up. Let's check in with your body. Have you ever woken up with dry eyes or throat, even with no allergies? Needed multiple alarms to get up, despite going to bed on time? Felt emotionally fragile or overstimulated within minutes of waking? Forgotten small details in the first hour of the day, like what you planned, or what you dreamed? Now ask yourself this: what if the solution isn't more, but less? Less ceiling. Less CO2. Less interference with the biology that already wants to heal you. Here's your light joke: imagine your body's like a team of tiny construction workers. Every night, they clock in to repair your mind and muscles. But if the air's full of CO2, it's like forcing them to wear fogged-up goggles and run in ankle-deep mud. They'll still work, but it won't be pretty. So, what can you do tonight? Let's simplify it. 3-tier plan. Tier 1, basic. Crack the window 15 minutes before sleep. Keep the door slightly ajar. Use a quiet fan to push or pull air gently. Tier 2, aware. Add a CO2 monitor, budget one, start around $40. Adjust habits based on data, track how levels correlate with energy. Minimize extra CO2 sources, candles, poor filters, sleeping pets if needed. Tier 3, Pro. Pair AC with intentional airflow, fan intake/outtake. Use passive venting tools, door grills, underdoor air gaps. Log your sleep quality and CO2 levels weekly. Treat fresh air like a health supplement, non-negotiable. None of this has to ruin your comfort. You can still have your cool sheets, your noise machine, your blackout curtains. But behind the scenes, the air will finally be working with your body, not against it. And the effects are cumulative. Better sleep equals better repair. Better repair equals better mornings. Better mornings equals stronger habits. Stronger habits equals sharper mind, healthier body. And that ripples out into every decision you make. You see, you're not just sleeping. You're training. Rebuilding. Recovering. And all of that depends on what you breathe. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, take a deep breath. See how it feels. If it's light, cool, and satisfying, like drinking clear water, you're on the right track. If it's tight, warm, or stale, you've still got work to do. Your future self. They're quietly rooting for that window to be cracked. So here we are, at the edge of your quiet night. You lie there, the hum of your fan in the background, the faintest draft slipping under the door, or maybe that little slice of night breeze brushing your cheek from an open window. For the first time, maybe, you're not just thinking about your comfort, you're thinking about your air. Not the mattress, not the melatonin. The air. The thing you breathe 20,000 times a day. The invisible partner in your survival. And it's here, in this quiet, where the smallest decisions suddenly feel profound. Because now you know what's swirling around in your sealed bedroom at 3:12 a.m. You know that carbon dioxide doesn't knock or shout. It settles. And when it does, it settles into your blood, your brain, your dreams. But tonight, you've changed the pattern. Maybe you cracked the window. Maybe you pushed a sock out from under the door. Maybe you just turned the AC down a notch and let a fan dance the air instead. That one change. It means you've shifted the chemistry of your night. And your body knows. Even if you won't remember it in the morning, your brain will. That slight coolness at the edge of your blanket? It's the taste of new oxygen drifting in. That exhale that doesn't feel trapped. That's your biology relaxing. That muscle twitch as you drift off, where your foot jerks like it remembered something important. That's your nervous system finally stepping off the gas. Here's your last quirky insight: in ancient Persian architecture, wind catchers were built into homes, towering chimneys designed to trap and funnel cooler air down into rooms. No fans. No electricity. Just geometry and air. Historians still argue whether they were more about comfort or prestige. But the results? Air movement. Coolness. Breathable sleep. Centuries ago. You, right now, are building your own version. One small decision at a time. Let's tie it all back. You're not here to fight air. You're here to flow with it. You're not trying to hack your sleep. You're trying to unblock it. Because sleep is not passive. It's the most dynamic thing your body does. And without fresh air, oxygen-rich, low CO2 air, it becomes sluggish, like trying to run underwater. So tonight, maybe for the first time, you gave your body the space to do what it knows how to do. And come morning, your breath will be deeper. Your mind will be clearer. And some part of you will whisper, yes. That's how it's supposed to feel. So, as you close your eyes now, whether you're in a city apartment or a countryside cabin, with AC humming or nature buzzing, know this. The air is moving. The room is breathing. And now, so are you. 300-word wind down. Let's slow everything down now. Let the words stretch out like a yawn after a long day. Let the thoughts fade, not sharply, but like stars dimming one by one as the morning inches closer. You feel the air brushing your skin. It's cooler now. Or maybe just quieter. It isn't pushing or swirling, it's simply there. Present. Supporting. Exactly what it should be. Your body settles into stillness. Not stiff, but fluid, like warm clay. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw loosens. Your breath becomes the rhythm. In. Out. In. Out. And underneath all of that, something deep within you starts to drift. The brain, busy all day, no longer trying to do. Just, be. The walls don't feel as close. The ceiling doesn't feel like a lid. The room, somehow, feels open. Spacious. Like you could stretch without touching the edge of anything. You're floating now, just a little. And as sleep comes, no fanfare, no jolt, just a gentle hush, like a curtain lowering slowly, you let go. Of the day. Of the to-dos. Of the stale habits. Tonight, you sleep with the air on your side. You've given your body the gift of clean breath, of free flow, of chemical calm. And in return, your body will give you rest. So drift. Float. Breathe. Tomorrow is waiting, clear-eyed and steady. But for now, just sleep.